When a millionaire discovered his maid with his daughter, an incredible truth was revealed, transforming their lives forever. David Carter, a man marked by wealth and power, returned home one golden afternoon, ready to bask in the comfort of his lavish suburban estate. He had built a dynasty through hard work, sweat, and an iron will. But today, something felt different. A heavy cloud loomed over him, something he couldn't quite see. As he pushed the door open, laughter spilled out, slicing through the stillness. His heart raced. He stepped inside, and there they were, Lily, his rebellious 16-year-old daughter, and Rosa, the maid he'd hired from a nearby town. They were sitting together in the family room, laughter bubbling like an overboiling pot. In that moment, hope swelled in David's chest, quickly morphing into familiar doubt. How could they connect? He feared what this friendship could mean. Shame washed over him as he noticed a smudge of flour on Lily's cheek, a sign of a carefree moment he had long since forgotten. At that instant, jealousy twisted in his stomach. He saw Rosa, her dark hair cascading around her face, and only perceived an intruder beneath her warm smile. They were laughing like old friends, far from the sterile formality he had imposed on his household. "Dad!" Lily's excitement shattered his moment of rage. But he quickly masked the pain that bubbled to the surface like a boil about to burst. "We were just baking cookies." She beamed, the joy illuminating her youthful face. David's heart sank. They were violating the boundaries he had carefully constructed. "Lily, this is not appropriate," he snapped, his voice slicing through the room. The laughter died instantly. Tension filled the air, thick enough to cut. At that moment, David saw the hurt in Lily's eyes, but he refused to back down. "What are your plans for the future? Are you really going to waste your time on this?" As the words hung in the air, embarrassment crept over Rosa, leaving her standing small and silent, an uninvited guest in a world of excess. The dinner table, once adorned with the lavishness that marked David's success, became a battleground. Misunderstandings flew like shrapnel, and harsh words tore through the fragile connections in their family. Things escalated quickly, and the words David never meant to say came tumbling out. "You think you can waste your life here, laughing with her while I work to give you everything?" The rage festered as guilt gnawed at him, and he saw the emotional cracks widening within Lily. Just then, a frantic ringtone broke the tension. It was Rosa's phone. With trembling hands, she answered the call, a pained expression flooding her face. "What?" "No. Please, please." The room fell quiet, reality crashing in like waves on the shore. Her son had been in an accident. David watched as the strength drained from Rosa's body, pierced through his defenses. Suddenly everything shifted. All that mattered was compassion. He wanted to comfort her, to ease the pain he had moments ago accused her of bringing into his home. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. As the words echoed in his mind, David felt a flicker of realization. These people from different worlds held the same fears and hopes. He could see it in Rosa's tears, in Lily's anguished face. Would he allow this moment of fragility to pass without bridging the divide? He could feel each second ticking away. A life-changing decision hung in the air. Would he finally learn to embrace a connection that transcended their worlds? Or would he remain trapped, chained by his own privileged judgments, unable to reach out to save a family his own from unraveling? David took a hesitant step toward Rosa, his heart pounding in his chest. He had spent years building walls around himself, fortifying his wealth against the world's chaos. But now those walls felt suffocating. "Rosa, I am so sorry," David stammered, his voice softer than he imagined it could be. She looked up, eyes wide with disbelief. Every second felt like an eternity as he desperately sought to find the right words to express the pain he felt for her. "I didn't know." Weakened Lily's voice, small and wavering, interrupted him. "Dad, we're all scared." She stood beside Rosa, the bond between them suddenly palpable, as if a thin thread connected their hearts. "Rosa needs support, and so do I. That combination of vulnerability and determination pushed David's heart toward a new understanding. He looked at his daughter, really looked at her for the first time in ages. The strong will that he admired was shining through her fear. She had grown up while he was busy chasing success. And this moment was a reminder that love wasn't found in money or power, but in closeness, connection, and presence. Rosa wiped her tears, her voice barely a whisper. "It's my son, Miguel. He was hit by a car. I need to go to the hospital." The anguish in her voice tugged at something deep inside David. He was reminded of his own children, and what it felt like to hold their small, fragile forms in his arms. The realization struck him that beneath the layers of wealth and titles, they were all just people fighting their battles. "Let us go. I'll drive you," David said before the thought even fully formed in his mind. It felt more like a command his heart demanded than a conscious decision. He could see the disbelief in her eyes, mixed with a flicker of hope. Lily's expression shifted from shock to gratitude. "Thank you, Dad." The sincerity of her smile pierced his heart, stirring emotions he had long repressed. Perhaps in this moment of crisis, he could find a way to solidify their fractured family. "Let me grab my keys," he said quickly, almost nervously relishing being in action. He turned toward the door, moving faster than he had anticipated. In the back of his mind he knew that this moment could be a turning point, not just for Rosa, but also for Lily and himself. He hoped that by taking this step, they would begin to mend the ties that had frayed over time. As they piled into his sleek black SUV, the atmosphere shifted. Each of them was grappling with heavy emotions, yet there was a sense of unity, a rise in hope against the cloud of despair. The quietness of the car was filled with unexpressed feelings, breaths of apprehension, and flickers of determination. David glanced at Rosa in the passenger seat. She was visibly shaken, clasping her hands tightly together. "I wish I could have protected him. I just want him to be okay," she murmured, her voice laced with desperation. "Whatever happens, we'll be there together," David replied, surprising himself with the strength behind his reassurance. He felt a strange sense of empathy welling up within him, which felt oddly alien and yet remarkably comforting. As they sped through the familiar streets, he couldn't shake the growing sense of purpose, one that made his heart beat a little bit faster. What if this moment led to deeper revelations, unexpected truths? What if pain transformed into something beautiful? Arriving at the hospital, the stark fluorescent lights felt jarring. David's thoughts raced as they strode towards the entrance. The weight of the past clung to him, but the potential for redemption drove him forward. What awaited them on the other side of those walls could change everything. Could this be the moment that redefined their lives? Or would they find themselves lost in a world of heartache forever? David pushed open the hospital entrance, and the hurried sounds of gurneys and medical chatter enveloped him. A chill ran through the halls, contrasting sharply with the warmth of their shared moment in the SUV. Every step felt heavy as anxiety settled in his stomach. Rosa rushed ahead, determination in every stride, but the uncertainty painted her features with shadows. Lily followed closely, her eyes darting between her dad and Rosa, sensing the tension in the air. David could feel it too. It twisted in his chest like a dull ache. They reached the front desk, where a nurse greeted them with a polite smile that quickly transformed into professional concern. "Can I help you?" "My son Miguel," Rosa said, her voice cracking. "He was in an accident. We need information." The urgency in her tone seemed to send a ripple through the waiting area. David stepped closer to Rosa, instinctively placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We're here for you," he said, finding strength in the moment despite the uncertainty that lay ahead. After what felt like an agonizing eternity, the nurse returned with news. "He is stable but in critical condition. You can see him in the trauma unit. Follow me." The weight of that statement hung in the air, a thin thread between hope and despair. Rosa's face fell, her bravado cracking under the weight of a mother's fear. Rosa moved first, her pace quickening. David exchanged glances with Lily, both of them aware that they were stepping into a storm, their hearts racing with unspoken fears. They arrived at the trauma unit, the sterile air cloaked them in tension. The sounds of medical equipment beeped sharply, a constant reminder of life hanging in the balance. David felt his heart pound louder, like a drum urging him to be strong. His eyes focused on Rosa as she peered through the glass of a room. There was a moment where she seemed to freeze, her breath caught in her throat. Lily squeezed David's arm, steadying him with her grip. Dad, what if? Her voice faded, but the worry was clear. We can't think that way. He is strong. He is a fighter. David didn't believe his own words completely, but he needed to say something reassuring both for his daughter and for Rosa. As they stepped into the room, the sight of Miguel, pale and motionless in a hospital bed, hit them like a tidal wave. The monitor beeped steadily, but his stillness filled the space with dread. Rosa stepped forward, tears streaming down her face, her hands trembling. Miguel, mi amor, please. Her whispered plea hung in the air, echoing with despair. David's heart twisted at the sight of a mother's anguish. He wanted to console her, to tell her everything would be okay, but the words seemed inadequate in the face of such raw fear. Lily's eyes watered as she observed Rosa breaking down, her heart aching for both Rosa and Miguel. At that moment, there was a shared understanding that what they were witnessing was a crucible, one that would either bring them closer or tear them apart. We're here, Rosa. You're not alone, David finally said, his voice firm. As he spoke the words, he realized they applied to him too. He had spent so long isolated in his own world, worried about himself. But now the weight of his family was heavy on his heart. Maybe, in the depth of this pain, he could learn to be the father they both needed. Suddenly, a doctor approached them, his expression unreadable. I need to speak with you about Miguel's condition. The words sliced through the air, every syllable heavy with gravity. Silence enveloped them as they braced for whatever news he brought. David felt his chest tighten again, the room spinning with the burden of uncertainty. What now? What would the doctor say? Would this be the moment that changed everything forever? David's heart raced as the doctor stopped just a few feet from them, the harsh fluorescent lights casting an unflattering gleam on the man's glasses. He cleared his throat, glancing at Rosa first. There was something almost paternal in the way the doctor's gaze softened as he looked at her, perhaps recognizing the depths of her pain. Ms. Rodriguez, we need to discuss the results of the tests. He paused for a moment, as if carefully weighing his words, and the surgery. Rosa nodded, her hands balled into fists at her side, her body trembling slightly. Is he going to be okay? Her voice cracked with the weight of desperation, as if she was clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, everything would turn out all right. The doctor took a deep breath. We've stabilized him, but he is facing several critical challenges. The surgery will be difficult. We can't guarantee the outcome. His voice trailed off, leaving in heavy silence in its wake. David felt that familiar tightening in his chest, like an iron vice grasping him and refusing to let go. He wanted to scream for the world to just stop. Pain refracted around them, unseen but throbbing beneath their skin. What if? Lily's voice broke into the stifling atmosphere. A mere whisper. What if it doesn't work? Lily. David started, but she shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. It felt impossible to keep her worries at bay when his own anxiety was spiraling. Dad, what if we lose him? The words hung heavy in the air, crushing hope beneath the weight of potential disaster. Rosa turned abruptly to Lily, her face distorted in agony, yet somewhere within those depths of despair, an ember of resolve flickered. We can't think like that, she said softly, kneeling to meet Lily's gaze. We have to believe he will pull through. The conviction in her voice stirred something deep within David. He needed to be strong for all of them. For Rosa, who was crumbling under the weight of her own heartbreak. For Lily, whose innocence was threatened by fear. Rosa's right, he interjected, trying to inject an abundance of courage into his own words. We have to stay positive. Miguel is strong, he has so many people who care about him. Before he could finish, the doctor interjected again. We'll begin surgery shortly, but I need you both to understand the risks involved. David felt a chill run down his spine. If failure loomed, it clouded every hope he had dared to muster. He grasped his daughter tightly, trying to shield her from the depth of the dark thoughts bubbling in his own mind. As the doctor spoke, fabricating a tapestry of medical terms and risks, David's thoughts drifted toward Miguel. The boy was on the brink of becoming everything he could be, full of passion, creativity, and dreams. This was not how it was meant to be. The rawness of life felt like a pendulum swinging too close to disaster. The tension in the room shifted slightly as more nurses moved in and out of the room, each a stark reminder of the urgency surrounding Miguel's situation. David watched as Rosa leaned against the wall, multitasking between her emotions and the need to stay upright. Can I be with him during surgery? Just for a minute? Rosa's voice was barely audible. I'm sorry, but that's not possible, the doctor replied gently, his face serious yet still sympathetic. But we'll do everything we can. There was a noise behind them, a woman's frantic voice calling out, "Where's my son?" It was a shrill wave of panic that rippled through the air. David turned in surprise, seeing another mother rushing toward the nurse's station. A tangle of fear and urgency etched on her features. In that moment, their collective heartbreak seemed to blend, creating a chorus of dread that wrapped itself around everyone in the waiting room. David felt the world narrowing, confined to this one slice of the hospital where the air itself felt thick with tension. The waiting room buzzed with murmurs, but all he could hear were the steady beeps of the monitor echoing in his mind. As the doctor walked away, David took a step toward Rosa, trying to piece together how to hold this fragile family together. We will get through this, he promised, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the worst might still be coming. Their ordeal was just beginning, and he could only wonder what other truths lay hidden beneath the surface of life, waiting, like secrets waiting to be uncovered. And just before the doctor re-entered the room, David's mind drifted to the very real possibility of loss, a sudden shiver on the spine of hope. What if they weren't strong enough after all? What other truths might await them in this moment of crisis? David's heart continued to race, the relentless beat mirroring the alarm that pulsed in his chest. Every second felt stretched, like time had been twisted and distorted in the air around them. The fluorescent lights buzzed, seemingly mocking their suffering as hope hung by a fragile thread. "Daddy, can I pray for Miguel?" Lily asked, her small hands clasped together, her voice a whisper. "Of course, sweetheart." He knelt beside her, feeling the cold linoleum beneath his knees. Together they bowed their heads. In that moment, as her soft voice filled the air with desperation and innocence, David couldn't help but feel that flicker of hope ignite within him. "Please let him be okay. Please let him come back to us," Lily murmured, her words trembling with each syllable. David felt the knot in his throat tighten, but he dared to imagine Miguel's smiling face, the way his laughter filled a room, spilling over like sunshine. Just then, the doctor stepped back into the waiting room, his expression grave. "It's time," he said softly, his words a hammer to David's heart. The moment had come. Rosa straightened, fear etched into the lines of her face. Can we see him before it starts?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I'm afraid we have to take him now," the doctor replied gently. "We'll start as soon as we can. You'll be updated as we go." With a nod that felt lifeless, she surrendered to the gravity of the situation. David wrapped an arm around her, trying to pull her closer, to forge a union of strength and compassion. But he was beginning to feel the weight of despair seeping from her. It was almost palpable, a dark cloud threatening to consume them whole. "Rosa, maybe we should," he started. "No," she interrupted, her eyes fierce with determination. "He needs us to believe in him. He needs to know we're here." "We are here," David echoed, wanting so badly to mean it fully. They exchanged a look, hers a challenge, his a plea. Just then the harsh buzz of fluorescent lights felt even more oppressive, outlining the fragility of their hope. Minutes dragged on like hours, each tick of the clock echoing louder in David's mind, drawing out every agonizing thought. He glanced at the waiting room, watching other families, strangers, all waiting. With every muffled sob and hushed whisper, the collective anxiety expanded, thickening the air until it felt suffocating. "Dad?" Lily spoke again, pulling him from his spiraling thoughts. "What if Miguel isn't strong enough?" "Lily," he replied, pushing aside the doubt that threatened to bubble up. "He is. Yes, the strongest kid I know." Even to his own ears, his response felt uncertain. "Promise?" she asked, her big eyes searching him, hoping for reassurance. Promise. He knew he had to stand tall, even if the ground was shaking beneath him. Just then, a nurse hurried in and called out a name. David's heart stuttered. Another family was being taken to the unknown. He felt a momentary rush of guilt at his own selfish worry for Miguel, when other families bore their own burdens, surrounded by their own dreadful realities. And just like that, a realization hit him. While they were caught in their emotional depths, what if they weren't as alone as they thought? What if, in this vast sea of pain, there were wells of strength and connection just waiting to be tapped into? Maybe he squeezed her hand, gathering courage. We should reach out. Talk to someone, perhaps share our story. The doctor returned to them, sadness lacing his words. It's time to gather strength together. It's what Miguel would want. As he spoke, a chill rushed down David's spine, igniting the flicker of clarity amidst the turmoil. They could be strong together. This was their moment to lean into hope. But as the surgery began, old fears crept back in. What if they were too late to save him? Miguel's life hung in the balance, and with it, the soul of this family. With an unsettled feeling twisting in his gut, David watched the theater of the hospital unfold around him. What happens if we're not strong enough? He whispered to himself, barely audible, but the words echoed loudly. A haunting question that needed answering. What if hope was just as fragile as the life of the boy they all loved? The sterile smell of antiseptic filled the air, mingling with the faint sounds of heart monitors and distant conversations. David couldn't shake off the feeling that time had paused, trapping them in a moment where nothing mattered but Miguel. The enormity of the situation weighed heavily on him. Every breath felt like a struggle, filled with invisible chains of fear. Rosa's arm trembled beneath his grasp, and he tightened his hold. "We'll get through this together," he murmured, more to convince himself than her. She didn't respond, her gaze locked on the double doors leading to the surgical ward, the only barrier between them and their son. "Can we pray again?" Lily asked, her voice breaking the heavy silence. David looked down at her. The innocence in her eyes contrasted starkly with the turmoil around them. He could see how desperately she clung to hope, yet he felt it waning within him. "Sure," he whispered, feeling more fragile than ever. They all knelt in a small huddle on the cold floor, their hearts echoing a simple plea for strength, love, and a miracle. They held hands, and as Lily's words flowed, David closed his eyes, letting the rhythm of her prayer wash over him like a balm. But as he listened, another thought crept in. What if it was too late? What if praying wasn't enough? A sob broke the silence, making his heart leap. He opened his eyes to see Rosa wiping away her tears. I can't lose him," she said, her voice raw with emotion. "I can't either," he replied, but he felt a wave of uncertainty crash over him. "But we have to hold on to hope. For Lily's sake. For Miguel's." David could feel the tears pooling in his eyes. It was hard to stay strong when doubt nagged at him like a relentless tide. He glanced around the waiting room again, at the other families who mirrored their distress. He wanted to reach out, to unite their collective pain into something powerful, something that could spark change. They were all fighting their own battles, and if they combined their hopes, maybe they could create a force too strong to be ignored. "Rosa," he said, feeling motivated, "maybe we should start talking to the families here. We could share our stories, maybe find some strength together." "It might help," she replied, her voice tentative but showing a hint of acceptance. With courage blooming, David stood up and cleared his throat. "Excuse me," he called, taking a few steps toward the nearest family. A couple, their young daughter clinging to their side, turned to him. "My name is David," he said, feeling the warmth of hope weave through him. "This is my wife, Rosa, and our daughter, Lily. We're waiting for our son Miguel, and we thought we might share our stories together. We could lift each other up." The couple exchanged glances before nodding cautiously. "We're waiting for our son too," the mother replied, her voice hoarse yet steady. Just like that, conversation started to overlap. Stories began flowing like a river, filled with currents of fear, loss, but also resilience. They exchanged contact information, promising to update each other on their loved ones. As they shared, David felt lighter. The weight on his chest eased just a bit. There was strength in numbers. Each shared story was a reminder that they were not alone. The flickering hope that had seemed so fragile moments ago was beginning to shimmer within him again. But soon, that feeling was interrupted when the double doors swung open. David's breath hitched. A nurse stepped out, her expression unreadable. "Family of Miguel?" she called, and all eyes turned toward her. David's heart raced, a mix of dread and anticipation flooding through him. "Is it good news?" he stammered, panic building as the air thickened with tension. The nurse took a step forward, and silence swallowed the waiting room like a thunderous wave. "We need to talk." His heart sank. Fear gripped him tightly as he braced himself for the words that would determine the course of this night. What would she say? What lay behind that door? David felt as if the world had stopped spinning. The nurse's words hung in the air, heavy and grim. With every step she took toward them, his heart hammered against his chest, each beat a painful reminder of what was at stake. The waiting room was thick with silence, as if the breaths of everyone present had been suspended. All eyes locked on the nurse. She wore that familiar hospital uniform, yet her demeanor was nothing short of somber. David's mind raced. It's not supposed to be like this. Not now. Not with everything they had fought for. Please, Rosa whispered, her voice tremulous as she squeezed David's hand tighter. He could feel her knuckles digging into his skin, the pressure grounding him even amidst the uncertainty. He glanced at Lily, who was watching with wide eyes, innocent and unaware of the full extent of their desperation. Tell me it's good news, David managed to choke out, his voice shaky. The nurse took a deep breath, her eyes searching for a way to ease the tension in the room. Miguel is out of surgery, she began, a flicker of relief momentarily lighting her expression. But then her brow furrowed, and David's stomach twisted once more. David exhaled, not knowing whether to feel thankful or terrified. What does that mean? Is he all right? The nurse hesitated, collecting her thoughts as she glanced down at her tablet screen. The procedure went as planned, but he has a long recovery ahead of him. He is stable, but her voice trailed off, and David felt the air thicken again, the warmth of hope beginning to fade. But what? Rosa prompted, her voice fierce as if willing the nurse to continue. There were complications during surgery, the nurse finally said, her tone softening. There's a chance he could experience some lasting effects. Neurological functions, for example, we won't know for some time. The words spiraled around David, crashing into him like waves against a cliff. Complications? He echoed, his head spinning. But he is alive, right? That's what matters. Yes, the nurse nodded, and we'll do everything we can. But you need to be prepared for the next steps. Rosa let out a choked sob that echoed in David's chest. He turned to her, trying to find the strength he thought he had, but all he could see was fear in her eyes. He couldn't let it drown them. No matter what, we'll face it together. We can help him through this, he said, more for her sake than his own. Just then, a voice broke through the heavy fog that enveloped them. Can we see him? It was David's voice, steady despite the torrent of emotions raging within. Yes, shortly. He is in recovery now, the nurse replied gently. As she walked away, David stood still, the weight of the news settling like lead in his chest. His family huddled close, their connection solidifying in that moment of vulnerability, and together they took a collective breath. Suddenly Lily spoke up, her small voice piercing through their turmoil. Is Miguel going to be okay? I'll be brave for him, Daddy. I promise. Her innocent determination tore at David's heart. He knelt down to her level, holding her face between his trembling hands. You are already the strongest, sweetest girl. Miguel will feel our love, and that counts more than anything. Rosa stepped forward, wrapping her arms around them, attempting to form a barrier against the impending uncertainty. They all closed their eyes, one family, united in love, ready to fight whatever came next. Minutes later, the tension in the waiting room shifted. David couldn't shake the feeling that something pivotal would happen soon. Just then, a different nurse walked through the double doors, her face bright with information that felt like a mix of dread and clarity. Family of Miguel? She called, drawing all attention, including David's, back to her. He straightened, feeling a knot tighten again. Yes, that's us. The nurse stepped closer. There is something else you all need to know. David's heart raced again. What could possibly follow? The nurse took a breath, the brief pause stretching out like a taut rubber band. Miguel had a stroke during the operation, she said, her voice steady but filled with empathy. We're not sure of the extent of the damage yet, but it's serious. We'll need to monitor him closely. Time stopped as David heard those words. The term stroke echoed in his ears, a jagged whisper that shattered the fragile sense of hope he'd managed to cling to. He felt his knees buckle, the room spinning. He braced himself against the wall just in time, clenching his jaw to hold back the rising tide of despair. Are you sure? Rosa's voice broke through his fog. There has to be something more we can do. Can't you help him? The nurse nodded, her expression softening. We are doing everything we can. It's just going to take time and you need to prepare yourselves for that. David blinked against the sudden flood of tears, his vision blurring. Lily tugged on his shirt, confusion written all over her small features. Daddy? What does that mean? Will Miguel still be Miguel? How could David answer that? How do you explain something so complex to a child? He knelt down again, fighting against the weight of the truth. We have to believe that he will be, he said, forcing a smile that felt like it might shatter. But it's going to be a long journey. Lily looked up at him, her youthful innocence making his heart ache even more. Then I'll walk with him, Daddy. I'll help him. Her conviction was a shield, something to hold on to in a storm of uncertainty. Of course you will, he said, searching for strength in her words. Rosa stepped closer, her expression transformed from worry into determination. We will all be there for him together. We'll help him every step of the way. Just then the double door swung open, and another nurse approached, clipboard in hand. If you'd like, we can take you to see Miguel now, she said, her tone calm and gently encouraging. David's heart raced again, a mix of anticipation and dread. He stood, gripping Rosa's hand tightly, as together they followed the nurse down the corridor. The hallway felt long, each step weighted with concern about what lay ahead. The sterile smell of the hospital mixed with the faint scent of antiseptic, a constant reminder of the reality they faced. At the end of the hall, the nurse paused and turned to them. He is in recovery, you can go in for a few minutes. Prepare yourselves, though he may not look as you remember. Those words hung in the air, warning and shielding them all at once. David took a deep breath, steadying himself. Ready or not, they had to face this together. As they pushed through the door, he braced for the sight that awaited them. The room was dimly lit, and there in the bed, surrounded by machines that beeped rhythmically, lay Miguel. Tubes and monitors connected him to the very lifeline which felt so tenuous now. David's breath caught painfully in his throat at the sight of Miguel's stillness, but as he got closer, he noticed the flicker of his eyelids. A thread of hope surged within him. Miguel? David's voice trembled, thick with emotion. For a heartbeat, silence wrapped around them like a blanket. Then Miguel's eyes fluttered open. He blinked slowly, confusion etching his features. David, is that you? He rasped, his voice barely a whisper, raw and grating. Miguel, you're going to be okay. Just take it slow, David urged, feeling a warmth swell in his chest. But before he could say more, Miguel's expression shifted from confusion to fear. What happened? David jumped in, trying to steer away from panic. You had surgery. You're safe now. We're all here. As David spoke, he caught a glimpse of the heart monitor, each beat pounding like a warning drum beat. The shadows of questions loomed large over them. But in that moment, as they stood together, David, Rosa, Lily, and now Miguel, the potential for healing began to take shape. Just then Miguel frowned slightly, suddenly aware of something more. David, what is happening to me? The question hung in the air, enabling a wave of uncertainty to crash down on them all. David felt the weight of the moment. We'll face it together, he whispered, even as doubts flooded his mind. What if they weren't strong enough? Would love be enough to pull them through this? As David searched his friend's eyes, vulnerable yet flickering with a spark of determination, he realized they were on the brink of something transformative, whether they understood it or not. And just like that, another piece of the puzzle shifted, revealing that the journey ahead might require more than just healing. Miguel, we need to talk, he said, ready to explain everything that lay upon their path. What could possibly come next? Miguel stared at David, fear etched across his face. The machines around him pulsed in the background, the beeping a constant reminder of his fragile condition. David took a deep breath, searching for the right words to ease Miguel's mind. You had a stroke during surgery. The doctors are doing everything they can, but it's going to be a long road, David continued, choosing his words carefully. He had to convey strength, almost like a bridge, to help Miguel cross the storm that lay ahead. But every word felt heavy. Miguel's gaze flickered toward the ceiling, as if seeking answers in the sterile tiles. What if I can't get better? The vulnerability in Miguel's voice hit David like a punch. This man had been a beacon of strength for so many, now reduced to a whisper of his former self. David hesitated. You're strong, Miguel. You've faced challenges before. We'll fight this together, I promise. David glanced at Rosa, her eyes filled with unshed tears, and Lily, who was now gripping her stuffed bunny, her small frame tensed with worry. He wanted to shield them all from the storm of emotions swirling in the room. Can I walk again? Miguel asked, his voice a blend of hope and despair. David's heart sank. The vision of going back to the life they knew together felt so far away, but he forced himself to speak. Yes, you will. It'll take time, but one step at a time. I know you can do it. As if a dam had broken, Miguel's eyes filled with tears. You don't know what that means to me, David, his voice cracked, raw from emotion. Just focus on getting stronger. David's own emotions threatened to spill over, but he fought to maintain his composure for everyone's sake. More beeping filled the air, and David noticed a nurse hovering just outside the door. She seemed to sense the emotion inside the room and waited patiently, giving them momentary space to be together. Miguel, I don't want you to think about the what-ifs right now. Just stay with us. David added gently, the urgency in his words palpable. Think about the good stuff, your family, your passions. Family. Miguel's eyes softened, and David could see a flicker of that familiar spirit, the one that had faced life's adversities head-on. Exactly, David said, smiling a little now. Just picture Lily's dance recital coming up. You'll be there cheering her on, I know it. Lily, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward. Miguel, you promise you'll get better so we can have fun together again? Her voice was small, but her message struck a chord. David held his breath, praying for the right response from Miguel. Of course, Miguel said, nodding slowly. I will, for you. Tears glistened in his eyes, reflecting hope even in the uncertainty. In that moment of connection, a sense of unity enveloped the room. They were bound together by love, determination, and the shared hope for brighter days. But a moment later, the nurse stepped inside, breaking the spell. Miguel, we need to check your vitals, she said gently, moving toward the machines with practiced ease. The sudden shift brought a pang of reality crashing back in. As Miguel watched the nurse juggle her tasks, he seemed lost in thought. David, what happens if I can't remember things? If I can't remember us? A shadow crossed his face. David felt the breath hitch in his throat. We'll make new memories. That's what families do, remembering and creating together, he assured, even as the words echoed hollowly in his mind. But deep down, fear gripped David tighter than he'd ever experienced. If Miguel didn't find his way back, would his family ever feel whole again? They needed to prepare for whatever lay ahead, and the uncertainty loomed large. Just then, the heart monitor began to emit a stronger, erratic beep. David's heart raced in sync. What is happening? He demanded, glancing back at the nurse. The calm demeanor of the nurse transformed, urgency replacing gentleness. We must stabilize him. Please step back. In an instant, the atmosphere shifted. Lights blinked on the machines, and David felt the foundation beneath him slip away. The world faded, leaving only sound, the frantic beeping and the rush of feet moving around him. This wasn't just about healing anymore. It was about survival. As they prepared to intervene, a question gnawed at the edges of David's thoughts. How far would he go to save his friend? The very essence of their hope hung in the balance. Would it break under pressure, or would it ignite a fire of resilience among them all? They had faced darkness before, but this was different. Could they hold on when everything felt so precarious? In the flurry of activity, David watched as nurses rushed in, their movements fluid yet urgent. He felt himself being pulled away from Miguel, the distance between them suddenly feeling overwhelming. The heart monitor beeped erratically, notes of chaos slicing through the air like shards of glass. Stay with us, Miguel, David shouted, his voice raw with desperation. Rosa clutched Lily tightly, fear tangling with breaths of hope. They stood close, a united front against the unknown. David turned to them, his heart racing, the gravity of the moment sinking in. It was as if their lives were poised on the edge of a knife, every choice, every moment echoing with potential. Please, David urged the nurses, what is happening? Is he going to be all right? One of the nurses glanced back, her expression calm yet serious. We're going to do everything possible. Just give us a moment to stabilize him. Lily's fingers clutched David's arm. Her eyes, usually bright with laughter, shimmered with unshed tears. Daddy, I want Miguel to be okay, she whispered, her innocence echoing with the trembling fragility of the room. David dropped to one knee, bringing himself to her level. "You're so brave, honey. He knows we're all here for him. That helps him fight." But even as the words left his mouth, doubt gnawed at him. Could love really be enough to combat this kind of fear? Time stretched and twisted as they stood in religious silence, waiting for any sign of intervention, their hearts synced to the rhythm of the monitor. How many moments had he taken for granted: the laughter over dinner, the wild stories on lazy afternoons. Suddenly, the chaos subsided like a wave receding from the shore. A doctor, someone David recognized but never got to know personally, emerged from the room, wearing a look that held fragments of sorrow and determination. "Family of Miguel?" he called, his voice steady, yet it contained an air of uncertainty. David's heart plummeted. "Yes, that's us," he replied, stepping forward, desperation wrapping tightly around his chest. "Miguel has stabilized for now," the doctor began, and the room practically held its breath. "But there are still challenges ahead. We suspect neurological complications, and we'll need to monitor him closely in the coming days." Every sentence felt like a weight dropping inside David's chest. Awareness surged among them, a collective understanding that the battle wasn't over. "Challenges, but he's alive," Rosa said, her voice shaking. "That's a start, isn't it?" David nodded, grasping onto that glimmer of hope. "Yes, it is." The doctor gestured for them to enter, and a fragile sense of unity filled the air as they entered the dim recovery room. Miguel lay there, still connected to tubes and machines, but this time the beeping had become a rhythmic reminder of life, fragile yet persistent. David moved closer, emotion welling in his throat as he took in the sight of Miguel's familiar face. The same warmth that had always welcomed him now cloaked in vulnerability. "Hey buddy," he said, his voice tender. "You did it. You came through." Miguel blinked at them, confusion clouding his usually bright eyes, but there was a spark of flicker of recognition. "David," he murmured, the struggle evident in his voice. "I'm right here, Miguel." "We're all here," David reassured him, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. "You're going to be okay. This is a hard road, but we're going to walk it together." Lily squeezed her stuffed bunny tight, stepping closer to the bed. "We're waiting for you to come to my recital, Miguel. You promised." Her hopeful words wrapped around the room, infusing it with light. Miguel smiled faintly, but then pain flickered across his brow. "I'm scared, David. What if I can't remember? What if I can't walk?" David leaned in, holding his friend's gaze steady. "We're going to work through it. Together. We'll take it one day at a time." Rosa stepped forward, brushing a tear away. "You won't be alone in this, Miguel." Not for a second. The atmosphere shifted. A bond solidified among them, a collective promise woven in the face of uncertainty. A cold hospital room melted away, creating a sanctuary built of love, support, and resilience, the very things Miguel needed the most. Days turned to weeks, each one marked by challenges that tested them but also rekindled their spirits. Together they navigated endless therapy sessions, laughter through pain, shared stories that built bridges over emotional chasms. Each smile from Miguel brought renewed hope, a reminder of their strength. One afternoon, as autumn leaves danced outside their window, Miguel had begun to speak more freely, his voice soft yet nuanced with determination. "David, remember when we used to climb that stupid tree?" He laughed, the sound pure, a balm for their worried hearts. "I do," David chuckled, a hint of nostalgia flooding in. "You were always fearless. I can be that way again, right?" Miguel's eyes shone with that familiar fire. Yes, you can. That spirit hasn't gone anywhere." It felt grounding, even optimistically reminiscent of days long past. In those fleeting moments, David realized that more than hope had sprouted within the shadows of tragedy. Strength had taken root. The barriers that wealth and privilege had built around his heart melted away, revealing something far more enriching: gratitude for the bonds forged through adversity. At the heart of it all, they were family. David, Rosa, Miguel, and Lily, all intertwined in this tapestry of togetherness, resilience blossoming in every corner. And as they gathered for Lily's dance recital, he could see the unwavering solidarity. The two of them cheered as Miguel put one foot forward, slowly but surely reconnecting with life again. When Miguel smiled, it wasn't just for him. It was for everyone who had walked this path together. It was a culmination of triumph over adversity, a celebration of connection and love. In that moment, David realized nothing had truly broken. What they had built was unshakable, born not from wealth, but from the willingness to embrace each other through the storms of life. And as the curtains drew back, David smiled, tears glistening in his eyes. Yes, they had moved mountains, crossed chasms, and discovered a renewed purpose deeper than any riches could ever provide. This was their story, now a tale of transformation that resonated within every heart. And so David knew that when life challenged them, they'd rise together. They'd face it hand in hand, forever intertwined in a journey of healing, love, and hope. But wait, you need to subscribe right now to our channel to not miss out on the next exclusive stories that will inspire you. Press that like button now to help feed the algorithm and spread these uplifting journeys. Comment below to share your feelings about this incredible ending and how it resonates with you. And don't wait not even one more second, share this amazing video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Show your support and help us build a community where love conquers all.